Hello, class. The one thing we haven't yet talked about is the role of the producer in theater. To put it in a nutshell, the producer is responsible for the money, for the economics of culture, for the economics of putting on a play. Uh, it's the total business end. Art has to be financed by something. Even if you do a free Shakespeare in Central Park, you're going to have to invest in a couple of swords or a crown, or something has to be bought. So there's always that. Museums, ballet companies, concert halls, they all have to have money. Television, even. That's why we have to watch advertising. So, in the theater, the producer, I knocked it down to 9 points. He is responsible, or she is responsible, or the corporation is responsible, or a combination of all of that is responsible. It's the name above the title. David Merrick presents Hello, Dolly. The Disney Corporation presents The Lion King. Right? Corporations now, too. And it does come in two kinds of things: profit theater and non-for-profit theater, which I hope to get into a little bit towards the end of this talk. But right now, I had sent you in an email the one sheet. This is all it is one sheet, right? Little lecture with the 9 things that a producer is responsible for. So let's talk about them. I'll go point by point and just give you some short explanations. And some of them are rather self-explanatory, but here goes, all right? Number 1, raising money to finance the production. Some producers put their own money in. More than likely, one of the main ways of doing it is you have a little party, playwright reads the play. If it's a musical, the play is read, songs are played, etc. And you have backers auditions, it's called, because at the end of that, these people will donate money for a bit of the show, and that's how they make money off the show if it's a hit. Now, it doesn't happen very often because we don't have hits very often. You know, the person who actually invested in something like what's on Broadway now? Well, nothing. Phantom of the Opera, for instance, they made a fortune off of it. Depends on how much you put in and how much of the piece of the pie you get, etc., etc. This is where a profit is made that is returned to its investors. As Baruchas, you know about investment and how that works. I'm not that familiar with it. I'm not a producer. So, anyway, he is or she is responsible for raising the finances, and that's the money to put on the play. Then securing the rights to the script. That's number 2. If the play is a revival, say it's Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, the royalties could belong to the estate of the passed away, or what's it, just dead playwright, or you have to ask them permission to put on the play, and there's fees involved in that. Most plays are bought up, the rights are bought up by broker firms. Samuel French Incorporated deals in plays. Music Theater International, mostly musicals. There are operas that do the same thing. The publishing houses. What's the other famous one? Dramatist Play Service. That's it. So say you want to do 8 performances of Death of a Salesman. You apply to Dramatist Play Service, say, and you fill out an online application. How much you're going to charge tickets. Big thing, how many performances and how big is your house? How many seats are you going to sell? And we at Baruch would say we are an educational institution, high schools, but a local out-of-city regional theater company would have different rate scales for different things. A Broadway revival could cost you a fortune. So, right, it costs millions of dollars to do Broadway shows these days. So that's securing the rights. You could also negotiate with the agent of a living playwright. Because when the royalties are passed on to one of those other organizations, that's how the playwrights make their money. They also make money off of the published scripts of their plays, and this is just taken to regular publishing houses, put on bookshelf, bookshelves in bookstores, and people buy the book the way an author would. You buy somebody's novel, you can buy somebody's play, and the playwright gets money off of that. But the rights to the performance is a whole other different thing. So producers have to negotiate all of this and what's going on with it. What kind of a company is your theater company? Dealing with agents for the playwrights, directors, and performers. This has to do with contract writing and negotiating salaries, etc. And then, of course, that was number 3, and number 4 follows right behind it, hiring the director, performers, designers, and stage crews. Now, the performers audition for the director, so the director actually gives a role to the performer, but it's the producer that negotiates the contract, and probably never directly with the, in fact, never directly with the actor or performer. Let's just say performer as a neutral noun, because if you want Meryl Streep to be in your play, you might meet her at a party and say, "Hey, Meryl, let's do a play together." And she says, "Sure, let's," right? But then it's like, let my people get in touch with your people. This is where the contracts are made and signed. And because of that, it goes to number 5. You deal with the unions. Now, all these parts of theatrical production have unionized. We'll talk about the first big one, the AEA. I mean, the EAE. Wait. Oh, it is AEA. I'm sorry. I had to think of what the little rubric meant. AEA, Actors Equity Association. Or Actors Equity of America, maybe. But Actors Equity. You just call it equity. This is where you cannot be in a Broadway show unless you are a card-carrying union member of that union. If you are offered a part because you're in an off-Broadway play and you're playing Hamlet somewhere in a basement and a person sees you and a talent scout maybe of a producer sees you and then you go and audition for the part on Broadway and all, if you are offered the role, you can get your ticket, your equity card, a union card. SAG, SAG. Most of you might have heard of that one because that's the Screen Actors Guild. And that's for movies. Just because you're an actor, you can't make a movie until you join SAG. A professional movie, a Hollywood-style movie. Okay, we're talking about the big, the top of the rank, not an independent little movie that makes a movie on 23rd Street or on the steps of our buildings, or off-Broadway plays. Those you're not unionized and everything else. So I'm not talking about that. Now, SAG has just melded together with the television performing union. It was separate. It was called AFTRA, AFTRA, and it stood for the American Federation of Television and Radio I guess it was actors. I have it written down somewhere, but you can look it up. You can look it up if you want to. AGVA, the American Guild of Variety Artists. Right? Anybody singing in shows or dancing in shows and Las Vegas or Atlantic City, that's a variety performance. So that's a different kind of union. Many people belong to more than one union. Meryl Streep will have been in a couple of these unions. Maybe not AGVA, because you don't go to Las Vegas to see Meryl Streep perform her latest hits. But you do if you're going to see Rihanna, for instance, or something. Even if you go to a concert kind of thing at Madison Square Garden, that is an AGVA. It's a variety performance. So, and when you get into the classical music world, opera and the orchestras and everything else, that is a whole other kind of union. The musicians' union for Broadway musicals. So the producers have to deal with the theater unions. 6, renting the theater space. Where are you going to put on this show, right? Broadway house. The Broadway houses, the people who own the Broadway theaters are 3 major organizations. 1 or 2 of the theaters in the Broadway area, the theater district area, are owned individually. I know for a fact that the Imperial Theater, no, the Music Box Theater is owned by Irving Berlin Incorporated. He's a composer, lyricist from bygone years. We're about to sing a very famous, you'll hear it all over the place, White Christmas. He wrote White Christmas. He wrote Easter, in your Easter bonnet with all the frills upon. He wrote that. He turned of the century, died in the 1970s or so, but he owned the Music Box, so his family owns the Music Box now. Music Box Theater on West 45th Street. But most of the main theater things, most theaters in Manhattan, Broadway houses, are owned by the Shubert organization. They started out as the Shubert brothers, and they've passed away. This was again turn of the century into the late 20th and later 20th, and then they regrouped and it became an organization. So the Shubert organization owns the theaters of Broadway. The other one is called Jew Jameson, and it has to do with an acronym of their children's name, Judy, Sam, something. Jew Jameson, anyway, James something. Jew Jameson. They own quite a few theaters, and the last is the Niederlander organization. The Niederlander family own about 4 or 5 of the houses. They're the smallest in terms of that. And this is not including the theaters that are owned by the nonprofit theater company. The American Airlines Theater is operated by the playwrights, not playwrights, oh God, Manhattan Theater Club, the Manhattan Theater Club. And Playwrights Horizons has its own theater down on 42nd Street in Off-Broadway Theater Row. So anyway, there are these other kinds of theaters. And Off-Broadway scale for contracts is different from Broadway. I don't know if I have explained it to you. Maybe I did when we talked about directing or theater spaces, but I'll reiterate it here. Off-Broadway is considered 1 seat to 99 seats off-Broadway. They are the basements of Manhattan and the 5 floors up with a theater in the back. These are, and I've acted in a lot of them over the years. That's 1 to 99 seats. 100 to 499 is considered off-Broadway. And that is a unionized pretty much place now. Off-Broadway became in contrast to Broadway. But then it got just as expensive and unionized. But cutting-edge artists had to go somewhere. So they went, that's why it's called off-Broadway. And that could be in Brooklyn or Queens. But there could be equity houses in Brooklyn and Queens, where they're completely unionized as well. So, and then Broadway is 500 seats up. Do you know that the theater with the most seats in Manhattan is Radio City Music Hall, where the Rockettes perform their Christmas show. And the second one is the Metropolitan Opera House. Anyway, so you rent the theater space. I have a little piece of paper here, which I'm going to send to you. See, I scanned these things, so these things are not, I couldn't copy and paste into the lecture. So that's why I'm sending these things to you as links, all right? This is for the Cherry Lane Theater, which was the first professional off-Broadway theater from the 1910s or 20s. Still in existence on Commerce Street. This is a theater for rent flyer that was given out, but this is old. This is for the from February 2008 to June 2009. So it's a long, 12 years ago, whatever. And that's why the figures are going to be totally wrong on it, because it doesn't reflect what the rental is now. But then, all right, you can get 10% off for daily rentals, 15% off for the hourly rate rentals of any daily rental, and 25% off for weekly rentals. They have a main stage. You can rent it for the whole week. There's a scale for nonprofit and a scale for commercial. That's why I should say commercial theater, not profit theater. Commercial is a better word, right? How many seats? It seats 179, right? It's over 100, but under 500. And how many by the hour? I'm not gonna read all this to you because you have it. So take a look at it as the pay scales and how much a week it costs. The most thing, a weekly cost for a commercial play by the week in this house is $17,500 a week, and that's just the rental of the place. When we talk about unions, ushers have unions. The people who work and sell you the beer and the drinks in the lobby at intermission are unionized. The backstage, of course, is unionized. The musicians are unionized, and you pay the rates for the performances for the people involved and how much you need. Supervising the work of those running the theater. Now, that's number 7. That includes the box office people. The people who sit in a little booth and you walk up and say, I would like to have a ticket for Thursday night. Do you have any seats available? Right? And they give you a ticket. That's at the box office. That can still be done, even though more and more and more it's done online and you pay the fees for doing it online. Every ticket, whatever the price of the ticket is, you'll pay extra, a little couple of dollars on top of that to go. Even at the half-price ticket booth, you get $4 on top of your half-price ticket. So if a ticket is $50 for you, it's really $54. Right? So, but that's the box office. The auditorium, that's the ushers and the cleaning people who vacuum up the floors and the rugs and all of that. That's the auditorium running. And the business office. The people who do count the shekels, the people who do count the money, and pay the salaries, etc. The actual business office, which gets set up for each individual play, because Broadway is a one-off. It's not repertory. That's the non-commercial stuff, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for commercial theater, you set up a production company for each individual play that you're going to be producing, and you, of course, are the head of it. You're the producer. It all answers to you, and you supervise it all. You make sure the books are balanced, just like any other business. And it's called front of house when they talk about that. We all know what backstage is. Then there's the stage, and then there's the front of house. And running the front of house are the ushers and the people who sell you the T-shirts, and the people who take the tickets, and the people who sell you the tickets, and the people clean up after you when you leave, so get the theater nice and pristine for the next bunch of people that are going to come in. And supervising the advertising, number 8. Now, advertising, right? You know what TV commercials do. It's all about advertising. Well, how do you advertise your show? You've seen sometimes on New York City buses, on the sides of the buses, something that just has a mask at the end and it just says Phantom at the other end, right? It's an advertising. That's print advertising, poster advertising, newspaper advertising, magazine advertising. And then there is media advertising, radio commercials, definitely television commercials. You've seen them when Broadway was up and running. I'm sure that when you were watching television at night, if you watch television at night, you've seen commercials for certain plays, definitely musicals. Who hasn't seen a Wicked commercial? The first one was in the 1970s, by the way. Mid-1970s, it was a musical called Pippin. And Pippin had it, that was the first one to use television advertising. But that's a big thing now. And then number 9, overseeing the budget and the week-to-week running costs of the show. People get paid weekly. Directors get paid in a lump sum. Designers get paid in a lump sum. You direct a play, here's your $20,000 or $100,000, however you are. You negotiate your contract as a director, and you get paid in a lump sum. Unless you're savvy enough to buy also a piece of the show. Because it's not just when the shows are running on Broadway that you make money if you back the original show. When it goes to those regional theater companies, or somebody in Texas decides to do a big revival of some musical or play in a theater in Houston, Texas. I think the Arena Theater's there. I believe it's that. But anyway, um, you you get paid weekly. So the weekly costs of running the show, from washing the costumes and ironing them, to sewing them and repairing them, to repair scenery. I mean, Phantom of the Opera has been on that stage at the Majestic Theater for 35 years. It's the longest running play in Manhattan right now. And I think in London also, where it originally opened, it's still running there. So for 35 years, well, the scenery gets worn out. You know, sometimes you have to replace those electrical units in the ceiling, and you have to redo some of the rehammer or something together or something like that. And the Carpenters Union is involved in doing that sort of work, but it's weekly. It's keeping the maintenance up and overseeing the budget. That's really all I have to say about a lot of that part of it, because it's right here in this little thing. So you should give that a read. It's really not too long. Those are what a producer has to do. AFTRA, what is it? Maybe it's the radio performance. It's not. Artists. AFTRA is the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. That's what the A is at the end, not of America. Artists. And they're just the performing end of it. All right. So these charts are also there. Now, of course, I'm holding it up, and it's totally backwards to you. You can't read it. But follow along in what I sent you, because I sent you the link to this. See, these are in PDF files. I can print them out, but I couldn't. I would have copied this whole thing and pasted it in, you know, like I did the other stuff all semester. So the producer at the top, you see little arrows going to investors, the angels. Oh, yes, those investors at backers' auditions are called angels. A Broadway angel is somebody who gives the producer money to put on the play for a little bit of the show. Okay. Limited partner. Options. A playwright has a play, you can have first refusal. You pick up the option to the play, which means no other producer can do your play, because so-and-so has the option to put from until he gives up the option. But in the meantime, you get a little money. It's sort of like an advance. So if he drops the option, you got to give the money back. Public relation firms. That has to do with the advertising. Then he's got agents, playwrights and performers, and unions. And under the option is playwright, and you'll see the arrow goes right there to the playwright and performers agents also. Then you've got a big thing going down for the director and the designers. The designers get the craft shops and those unions going. This director gets the stage manager, who gets running crews, performers unions, and the director's staff. That's all there in terms of the commercial theater. And I'm putting it out here. It's the top part, all right? And so read that on the side and that. This is out of a textbook, by the way, and I don't use textbooks very much. But this part is about nonprofit theater, and that explains this other chart, which I think comes to this way, so turn it around. It's a board of directors. In a nonprofit theater company, the profits go back into the theater. Even when they take a play, like a chorus line that started down at the Shakespeare Festival Theater, the Public Theater downtown, as off-Broadway, they moved it to Broadway for a commercial run. They get the profits, but the profits are put back into the original company. So there's a board of directors that run the nonprofit theater, and there's some volunteers involved. Then there's an executive committee, and the board's functions: finance, fundraising, marketing and public relations, nominating, recruiting, volunteers, facility, that's the theater that they have, personnel to run in the work in the theater, long-range planning, what are they going to do 5 years from now? You know, the Metropolitan Opera has its schedule worked out. They just asked my department at school today. I just got an email from the head of theater. What did I want to do next fall and summer? They've asked for the schedule for summer 2021 and fall 2021. We're finishing up fall 2020. And they only held it off so long to even ask us, because we're still not sure. We know we're going to be online in the spring, and we know we're going to be online in the summer. I don't think I'm going to do a class in the summer. I think I'd like my summer free. I was free last summer with it, and because I was supposed to go to Ireland all summer. Now I'm hoping to go to Ireland all next summer. So I'm not going to I'm not going to sign up for a summer class to teach. But I do want my class back on Saturday next fall. So I've got to tell Professor Teneriello to please give me my Saturday back. So that's good. But you plan these things ahead. So that's the planning thing. Advocacy, that's the legal people, lawyers, etc. Then you see the management function and the management, and that's where the fundraising, the audience development, box office, facility, booking, touring, sponsorship. I mean, read this. This is nonprofit because the directors belong to the theater company, and they have a bunch of them, and they get paid salaries. They don't necessarily get paid lump sums. Same with the actor. Well, actors are always paid weekly. So that's the nonprofit people, and that's really what the difference is between commercial and not-for-profit or nonprofit theater. Then, of course, there's regional theater, the local community theater. You could be living in Binghamton, New York, right? And there was a company there. They do plays at the Robeson Center for Arts and Sciences. I've acted there. That's where I got my master's in Binghamton. So in those years, way back when, I acted there and I started directing there. We got paid a little for directing. We did not get paid for acting. But the Robeson Center for Arts and Sciences put together a theater company. These are called regional theater companies, and they're all over the United States. And professional theater, which I don't like that word, because to me a professional is somebody who comes to rehearsals on time, knows his or her lines, and performs to the best of their ability. That's a professional actor to me. Just because you have an equity card, no, that means you can sign an equity contract and go to Broadway. But you can have a bad doctor and you can have a good doctor, right? So you can have a bad actor with an equity card and a wonderful actor working down in Chelsea someplace in a theater. So you judge for yourself the quality of performance. So yeah, you do that. And how do you get parts, right? I was going to do this. Sorry. Regional theater. This, which is not in the thing I'm sending you, is Actors Equity Association Agreement and Rules Governing Employment in Mid-Sized Theaters, or what's called LORT, National LORT, League of Regional Theaters. Right? This is not the contract, but these are the rules. And look how thick this document is. And this document is dated from April 24th, 2005, expiration date April 29th, 2007. These are 2-year rules. Professor Krebs used to be the deputy chair for theater, and he retired a couple of years ago. And when he did, he gave me these things because he was a producer before he came to Baruch and started teaching. He not started teaching, he already was teaching out in Rutgers University and then came to Baruch. But he produced a lot of plays off Broadway and 1 or 2 partially on Broadway, right? So there are rules in here. What's this? Okay, personal property. Hey, this is Article 30. I don't know what article it is, but it's something 39. Personal property. A, dressing room. The producer agrees to restrict public access to the actor's dressing room and to provide facilities for safekeeping the actor's daily and incidental street clothing, coats, overcoats, shoes, and/or makeup not used in rehearsals or performances while said articles are in the theater and other rehearsal and/or performance space. The producer agrees to inform all actors of necessity for using such facilities by posting a written notice on the board. In other words, if you don't say, lock up my pocketbook, and your pocketbook is stolen, then he's not liable. But he offers you he'll lock up your pocketbook or lock the dressing room doors, etc. And then there's a little bit of liability. Such liability shall be limited to $10,000 for the actor's personal effects and or clothing, $3,000 for the actor's furs, coats, and overcoats, $3,000 for the actor's jewelry, watches, and radios. You report something stolen, you can get some money. Photograph, photo calls before the rehearsal period, during the rehearsal period, after the after the first public performance, there shall be no more than two-hour calls in the first 3 months after opening. That's to take still pictures, let alone videoing. There's whole sections on here in videoing too. Ticket prices, a change in seating, potential weekly box office gross. I mean, it's all this. It's all in here. Even nudity, saying that you can't. No producer can ask you to take off your clothes unless a member of Equity is standing there at the auditions, and that the taking off of clothing is germane to the plot of the play, that it's in the play. If the playwright says so-and-so enters naked, fine. And it's not to be done at auditions, by the way. A lot of this has to do with non-discrimination also. You can't not hire somebody because they have an ugly body. But we do that now anyway, right? So, and that's that thing. When I acted for auditions, this was me with a little hair and a mustache. I went bald when I was in Faust and I shaved. Right? So this has to be about 12 years old. I think it's older than that. I think I used this picture for a very long time. Anyway, and on the back, are parts I played, plays I directed, special skills, etc., height, weight, blah, 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 and email address. You never put your address on there. You don't want people to know who you are that way. I always put So Let's Get Plays Directed because I always wanted people to know I was also a director. And when I have a director's resume for a company in the past to kind of try to get a directing job somewhere, I also listed that I was an actor. So, but that was it. Because they ask you in audition process to bring, let me see, I think I had this marked. Well, yeah, here's the thing. Oh, this was for Phantom of the Opera. Seeking actors. Oh, this is a thing called Backstage. You can go to their website too, but it used to be a newspaper. Now it's this weekly magazine. And in here are the casting notices. Casting. So you find the show you want. Say for Phantom of the Opera, okay, Phantom? Seeking Equity actor-singers for possible future replacements in the current anniversary tour of the Phantom of the Opera. Then it describes that, it describes the characters, etc. I'm just going to read this to you, okay? It's the kind of thing I would have put under an overhead projector and thrown out on the board. Actually, I think I have this as a scan also. I should send that to you so you could kind of read what this looks like. Equity principal auditions will be held at Pearl Studios, blah, blah, blah. Be prepared to sing a brief song from legit musical theater repertory. Do not sing pop or rock music. Bring your book of music in case you are asked to sing a second selection. An accompanist will be provided. Bring a current picture and resume stapled together. Where'd my picture go? Oh, here it goes. Can you see the staples in the corner? This thing is stapled to this. Because often they don't want to, it's like applying for a job. Why should they see what you look like, right? So the casting directors will separate these often. They don't want it. Some people print them on the back of the picture. Like that was a big thing when Xerox machines came. Oh, I'm going to Xerox the back of my pictures. Then you get a job and you're doing something, or you did the job. You can't add it to the resume. Meanwhile, you've used up 500 pictures. And these are cheap. I mean, not cheap. The direct performers, I paid for these. I had 1,000 of them. I got, I think, a handful now. Sing the song. Some of these tell you to sing. Let's see. Prepare one musical song to show your range. Right. Well, some of them talk about 16 bars of music. most musicals, most songs from the American Songbook, and I'm not talking rock musicals, rock songs or rap songs or anything. Don't rap unless you are actually auditioning for Hamilton or In the Heights or a rap song. You know that the show has a rap number in it. That's okay. But you're doing Oklahoma, South Pacific, Sunday in the Park with George. You have to have Broadway style, Broadway singing ability. And most songs are written in A, B, A, and 32 bars. So 16 bars is half a song. You know, happy birthday to you, that's A. Happy birthday to you, that's another A with a little variation. Happy birthday, dear so-so, that's the B. Happy birthday to you, right? A, B, A. Most songs are written like that in this kind of thing. So 16 bars is half of it. It's usually a verse and that bridge in the middle, the B section. I always sang a song called Swanee because it was fast. Swanee is over before it starts. So anyway, by George Gershwin. And you do a monologue. If it's a comedy, they'll ask you to do a comedy monologue. If it's Shakespeare, you got to do a Shakespearean monologue. And it's always advisable not to do it from the show that you're auditioning for if you know the show. Because you don't. So if you're doing Hamlet, you do a monologue from Henry V or from Macbeth or something else. You know, but not from Hamlet. Because directors do not want to see your preconception of the characters. So that's a quick thing about auditioning. A little business thrown in here, right? I'm sure I'm going to miss out a lot of what I wanted to say, but I know that you are probably not listening anymore, and you shouldn't, because I've been talking for a while, and this is it. This is the end of the class, right? It's the last theatricals or elements of the theater. We've talked about the actors, we've talked about the director, we talked about the designers, right? Costumes, lights, settings, etc. We talked about theater spaces in relation to the design. We talked about, and now the producer. These are the elemental things on how to actually do theater, not just read about it, not just understand its history, which is important. You know, because I knew a woman one time when I was working at Theater Circle, which is a theater memorabilia shop on Times Square. I was a night manager there. I worked there for 5 years or so before I came to Baruch, and because I had a knowledge of theater books and plays and things, and there was a bookstore in the back of the room. Yeah, you came in and bought your Phantom of the Opera T-shirt. In fact, it's across from Phantom of the Opera. If you're ever on 45th Street, look for a sign that says Theater Circle. That was my old store, and but in the back was a bookstore. We sold scripts and things, and actors would often come in looking for monologues for auditions and stuff. We sold backstage when it was a newspaper. And I had a young woman who said to me, "Why do I have to know about Rodgers and Hammerstein?" Now, they're a very famous musical comedy writers. Rodgers wrote the music, Hammerstein wrote the books and lyrics to the plays. Oklahoma, Carousel, The King and I, South Pacific, they wrote The Sound of Music, which is a title you probably know. Okay, so anyway, that was their last show because Hammerstein died. Anyway, that'll put an end to any collaborative partnership. They were also producers, and they produced a lot of plays, and they produced their own work too. That way, they made money off their own shows. They paid themselves. Anyway, they why do I need to know Hammerstein? You know, because she wanted to be in Tommy. She wanted to be in the ups, you know, the newer things. And I said to her, "Look, you're going to have to play. You're going to be in a dinner theater somewhere, hoofing it in Oklahoma, or a man carrying a spear in Camelot." In a dinner theater in Akron, Ohio, in order to get your equity card. And that's what you're going to be doing first. So you better know your Rodgers and Hammerstein. Now, theater will change as the generations change. If I was going to be in Hamilton, I would have to learn how to rap. Can you imagine? But in the meantime, no. And of course, you don't have to worry about singing if you're in a drama or a comedy. So that's the audition process, and it's a lot of fun, and it gives people a chance to see you. And you may not be good for the the thing you're trying out for now, but back in the mind of the director, he might say, remember that guy that showed up at the other show that we did? Why don't we give him a call and call him in and see what he can do? So it's all about who you know. You all know about networking. Don't you go to Baruch to learn how to do that? So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about production. You have these things to read, go over it. You're not writing about the production in the book, the play this week, paper this week. You're writing about the other things. You don't have to know, because a lot of the production stuff is what's behind it all, right? That's what I wanted to say. Do you know that there is such a thing as entertainment law? There's entertainment medicine. You are Baruchers. Every actor has an entourage of agents and people who can read contracts. Even nonprofit theaters hire people who know how to write grants, apply for grants for these theater organizations from the public out there. If you watch public television, you'll see how Masterpiece Theater is brought to you by this and this and this and the Lester P. Lawrence Fund and all of that, right? That they get the money from the grants. Right, so they need it. It's the business end of entertainment. It's the culture of entertainment. The culture, the economics of entertainment, the economics of culture. And it has to be paid for. You can lose a lot of money. There was a producer, his name was David Merrick, I mentioned him before. He had a habit of, in fact, somebody wrote an autobiography about him that was called The Abominable Showman, as opposed to Snowman, because he was kind of nasty. He was a piece of work. His name alone was up there, David Merrick Presents. And he would throw on Broadway 8 or 9 shows every season. It's kind of like they say, you take something and throw it against the wall and see what sticks. That's what he would do. He would produce all these plays. Many of them would fail, but he would get Hello, Dolly. I'm trying to think of other shows that became very famous that he produced. Harold Prince did the same thing, but Harold Prince also directed. Harold Prince was wonderful, did a lot of Sondheim shows and stuff. He only just died a year or two ago. Hal Prince, he was in his 90s, worked up until the day he died practically. But they were men and women of the theater. Irene Selznick presents A Streetcar Named Desire, right? A woman directed one of the seminal works of the mid-20th century. Produced. And no wonder her husband was David O. Selznick, who produced Gone with the Wind. So she knew about producing. Then they got divorced and he married a movie star. So, that's another thing. So, all right. Take from this what you will. All right. Take care. See you. Bye-bye.